Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome to episode 2 of Forgotten Footballers. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Turkish League edition. So the Turkish League is one of those weird ones where they definitely love the branding of getting old players to kind of come through there and end off their career there or spend some of their twilight years of their career there. And I understand it, As an American, I'm very familiar with this. The MLS was kind of known for that for a lot of years, and I think it's a decent marketing strategy as far as getting eyes on the league, getting attention. We see what's going on in Saudi Arabia right now with Ronaldo, so obviously this is an effective strategy to build some sort of initial following for a league, but long term, I'm not the biggest fan of it. I like to see that the MLS is going for a more youth-driven approach, a more homegrown approach, and I think that the Turkish national team and Turkish football in general would benefit from doing the same. But as things stand, this is kind of the way that they like to run their league, and because of that, we have some pretty interesting footballers to talk about today, so let's just go ahead and get into it. So we're gonna start off with one of the most brilliant left foots that we've ever been blessed with watching in the game, and that is Mesut Özil. He came to the global stage during his time at Real Madrid, where he was dominating La Liga, and I mean dominating. This guy's time at Madrid is for some reason just kind of not talked about in the pantheon of Real Madrid great players and their whole great history, and I get it, there's a lot of legends that they've had, but Özil's time has really just kind of gone under the radar for me as being so brilliant, so special. In the 85 total league matches that he played for Madrid during his time there, he put up 47 assists. With numbers like that, I'm not really sure why he doesn't get talked about more as a Real Madrid legend. My kind of running theory is that during his time at the club, since they did never lift the UCL, that's the thing that Real Madrid kind of operate on, is winning European silverware. So that not happening during his time at the club, I think, is ultimately a stain on his legacy with the fans there. I wouldn't really know, but that's kind of my assumption. Although I do think it's a bit unfair if that's the case. This guy, he really came into his own as a superstar during his time at Real Madrid, and that carried over into the Premier League, which in my opinion is the toughest league to play in the world, especially for a creative player like him. And so I just think that this time should get more appreciation. But anyways, moving into his time at Arsenal. So there's kind of a continued trend in the sense that as an individual, Özil continued to play at the top level as a creator, but the team around him just never really hit the heights that fans were really hoping for. This is really highlighted in the 2015-16 season where Leicester won the league, and I mean, obviously Spurs, if you were around for that time, despite the fact that Spurs finished third, they were the team that was more so in the running with Leicester throughout the season. That's the team everyone assumed was going to make the jump on Leicester at some point. But Arsenal were kind of in there the whole time, just not ever quite making the stride they needed to jump into that title race with any sort of firm, this is what we're doing now, we're going for the title. It was always more of a top 4 thing, and that was kind of a trend with Wenger's Arsenal towards the end of his tenure, but especially this season, it feels like such a missed opportunity. During this season, he famously put up 19 assists, nearly breaking the assist record. It was a remarkable season, and frankly, if Olivier Giroud was a better footballer, Arsenal would have won the league. That is my honest opinion. It's such a shame that such a great player and other great players in that team with him were robbed of that chance for such a great achievement to bring Arsenal back to the top. So there's a whole lot of things that could be blamed for Ozil's fall off from the top of the English game, and we're gonna get into some of those things now. Just for starters, I know that there's a lot on and off the pitch that people say play into it. I don't think it's any one factor. I think to just say that it's this or it's that is a bit naive. My opinion is that it's kind of a combination of these factors that all one after another continue to push Ozil and Arsenal further and further apart, and ultimately that's why we saw him leaving in such a honestly disrespectful way for what is truly such a club legend there. So one underlying issue with the whole thing is that there was a style shift going on in the Premier League at this time. Pep's City was dominating the league and Klopp's Liverpool was coming into their form as well. We were seeing these high pressure systems that resulted in a lot of off-ball movement and work that Mesic just simply has never wanted to do. And that trend was brought in with Unai Emery and Mikel Arteta after Wenger was sacked. It was really more so focused on the defensive side of the ball first. I feel like that's where both of those two managers initially staked their claim in the squad. And Ozil just never fit into that type of a setup. Arteta tried to give Ozil a proper run of games at one point, but this was the season that pandemic shut down football in 2019-2020, so that run kind of got cut short at a point, and then a whole lot of other drama ensued off the pitch. Again, these were things that were slowly pushing the two parties further and further apart from each other, and then the nail in the coffin came. I should say nails in the coffin because there was multiple off the pitch issues and dramas between the management, the manager, and the player. It was a whole mess going on. I'm just gonna talk about a couple of the bigger issues that played out in the public eye. During COVID, it was a pretty common trend that a lot of Premier League clubs especially were having their players take pay cuts to help support the rest of the staff during a really unprecedented time for the economy. And Mesic just outright refused. He did not want to take the pay cut. And so that instantly drew an even bigger separation between Mesic and Arsenal fans. Like, that was a really big moment of separation. And then it all kind of capitulated with the whole China situation. So Mesic came out in support of the Uyghur Muslims who are being imprisoned in China, being put into camps and persecuted because of their religious beliefs. Mesic, as a Muslim man of faith, he obviously wanted to speak out against this persecution, and justifiably so, absolutely. Arsenal, unfortunately, having lots of ties with China, sponsors and whatnot, they wanted to distance themselves from the player. And so that was what I believe was the final nail in the coffin, where they decided that they needed to get rid of Mesut Özil. He would end up moving to Turkey to play for Fenerbahce, which is the last time we saw any sort of resemblance of the player that we used to know. This was during the 2021-22 season where Mesut put up just under 1,300 minutes with 8 goals and 2 assists. It really is just, it's such a shame with how everything ended with Mesut in Arsenal, with Mesut in Madrid as well. Like, it feels like he was on the verge of glory at both of these clubs, and different circumstances kind of got in the way of that. And ultimately, he will be remembered differently because of that. And it's a shame because he is a legend of the game, one of the best attacking midfielders I've ever seen. But there's always that stain on his career and his legacy in general. And it's just sad, man. It really is a shame. The next player we're going to be talking about is a really, really underrated player, one of the most underrated of the 2010s in my opinion, and that's Arda Turan. This is a guy who a lot of people may not know has another one of those really weird off the pitch kind of story-laden careers, which has gotten in the way of what was ultimately a really, really brilliant footballer. So for those of you who might not be too familiar, Arda was really just a well-rounded kind of winger/8. He was very, very effective on and off the ball, very elegant with his play, especially dribbling in one-on-one situations, always looking for a pass, and especially earlier in his career, he was really keen with an eye for goal, always able to break through that last line. So he was just overall a really, really well-rounded midfielder, especially in attacking situations, and over time developed some pretty solid defensive discipline to his game as well that made him just a really well-rounded, strong player. He's most known for his time at Atletico Madrid, but he also spent a famously short and not great stint at Barcelona. It was a little ugly. He wasn't a super high output player as far as goals and assists go. He was more so playing in the midfield phase of play, in the middle third. And despite never really being one of the big stars in any of the Atletico Madrid teams that were successful throughout the mid-2010s, he played a crucial role in a lot of those teams. And I feel like he kind of gets forgotten about. He's also one of those players I feel like they've ironically really struggled to replace. He had just such a unique skill set and was able to provide a little bit of everything that other midfielders weren't quite as well-rounded with, especially in that Atleti setup. And I think that they're still struggling to find that kind of burst of creativity out of midfield to support the attack. And I think that's a big reason as far as to why João Felix never has fully worked out as an Atleti player, is the lack of link from defense to attack, which is really exactly what Arda was there to provide. So as I kind of alluded to earlier, he spent a really forgettable couple of years at Barcelona. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm sure the dude got paid, but it was just a really weird and unfortunate transfer because it was a very weird transfer at the time, for sure. You know, he was kind of hitting that point where he was starting to slip and his numbers wasn't really putting up the same level of output. It was not the time you thought that the Barcelona transfer was going to happen. And so I think that is, through no fault of his own, a stain on his legacy, because he was put into a situation he just really shouldn't have been at that point in his career. And I honestly feel like he just never got that right move at the right time. The Barcelona move is a great example of a wrong move at the wrong time, but I would have loved to have seen him playing in the Bundesliga during the kind of mid-2010s for those Wolfsburg teams, those Dortmund teams that were super high energy in transition and play. I felt like that would have suited his style really well. I'm not sure if he ever would have had the physicality or the discipline to cut it in the Premier League, but there was definitely transfers that could have happened for him that didn't, and it's pretty unfortunate, although we're gonna get into a few things that might be kind of reasons for that. So he's got a super crazy temper. Like, the dude is a straight hothead. There's plenty of clips out there of him getting into it with referees and stuff. It's ridiculous, but the problems don't end there for Arda and his temper. When he was the captain at Galatasaray as just a 21-year-old wonder kid, he crashed his car before training, and that resulted in him just missing the session. And I'm gonna guess that that wasn't a fender bender. Something tells me he might have been doing his best Vin Diesel impression on his way to training. You know, this 21-year-old kid, captain of his club, he was not in the right lane. Come on, guys, let's be for real. He's had controversies where he's threatened journalists and gotten into physical altercations with them, so hopefully I never cross paths with Arda. He's gotten into fights at nightclubs. There's a really good thread on Twitter, which I'll try to remember to drop in the description of this video, which kind of goes through some of those different moments that he's had in his career. But overall, I'm gonna be willing to bet that a lot of those off the pitch issues is what played into him never getting that move to a different system, a different league. But I don't think that has to fully take away from us looking at it from a footballing perspective and saying this could have been a really exciting player on a really exciting team if things had played out differently. He ended his career with another forgettable transfer after Barcelona, playing in Turkey, at first for Istanbul Başakşehir, and then at Galatasaray. All in all, the way that I'll choose to look at players like Arda, you know, with these off the pitch issues and everything, is, despite everything that happened, definitely a brilliant player, someone who was fun to watch, and someone who I would choose to remember as one of the great artists of the game. And that's definitely gonna be the way that I have to force myself to remember this next player, because this guy has got easily one of the most interesting and what if careers in the history of football, and that's Mario Balotelli. If you don't already know, Mario was a genuinely unbelievably talented striker at his peak. He had the pace, the strength, the technical ability, finishing on both feet, headers, just, the guy was an absolute monster of a number 9. There was nothing he couldn't do on the pitch in the attacking department, and he was unplayable when he was at his best. There are plenty of coaches and players that are on record stating that Balotelli is genuinely one of the most talented footballers that has ever come across the game. And while a lot of people love to focus on the funny stories and all of the unfortunate incidents that he's involved himself in off the pitch, I think one of the things that's really gone under the radar with Balo is how consistent he's been when he's able to get the game. So when the off the pitch stuff isn't going on and the injuries aren't a problem, when he's available to play and his coach is playing him, the guy scores goals. And that's happened his entire career. In any season that he's played more than 20 matches, he has scored more than 15 goals, bar one season in AC Milan. That was the 2013-14 season where he scored 14 goals, one less than that 15 benchmark. The guy was consistently putting up around that 0.5 goals per game mark, if not better. It's been a ridiculous goal return that has carried on throughout his entire career. His most prolific spell actually came a little more recently than you might think, and that was at OGC Nice playing in France. So after some tough seasons with Liverpool, where some injury problems and some attitude problems and just overall not making the cut for selection at the time kind of played into him not doing very well there, he ended up getting a transfer to OGC Nice. When he was transferred there, we arguably saw the best version of Ballo that we ever saw in his career when he scored 15 plus goals in back-to-back seasons for the very first time in his entire career. And when we look at Nice now compared to the team that Balotelli joined 5-ish years ago, 10 years ago almost, it's definitely a very, very different team. They've come a long way. They've gone much more towards the youth. They've, I believe, got new ownership. And so they've really been able to take strides forward as a club in France and become consistently towards the upper end of the mid-table. And that whole revival started with the team that was led by the talisman, Balotelli. And again, he just does not get the credit for that. And I think it's a little bizarre. So after another poor stint in Italian football with Brescia, this leads us to the kind of linking point for all these players, which is his time in Turkey. And again, we saw that goal scoring trend continue for Adana Demirspor. In his debut season in Turkey, he scored 18 goals in 25 appearances. He has since moved on and is currently playing in Switzerland with FC Sion, where thus far in the season, he has 5 goals in 11 appearances, still scoring goals. There's been plenty of videos and plenty of discussion going on and on about the what ifs and what could have been, how great was he really, and it's just not what this is about. You know, I want to focus on the achievements that he actually had and talk about the fact that despite the discussion around his career, he's genuinely been a really consistent and a really solid striker, and I think he's had to work through a lot of the adversity that he brought onto himself as a younger player, and I have nothing but respect for that journey. You know, he made a lot of mistakes as a kid, he had a lot of pressure thrown at him, but over time I think he's matured into a true professional, and I have nothing but good things and praise for Mario Balotelli at this point in time. You know, he's really developed on and off the pitch, and I think he's now a mature number 9 in the best way. So yeah, that's all I got today for the Turkish League edition. I hope you guys enjoyed that. The next video we're gonna be getting into is gonna be talking about some of the forgotten number 10s, which is, you know, those attacking midfielders, those luxury ballers, which kind of fell out of fashion over that decade in the 2010s. Those are some of my favorite players to watch during that era, and there's some real interesting stories in there as well. So make sure y'all stay tuned for that one for sure, but that's all I got for y'all today, man. Later.